Welcome everybody to this ANBA webinar in partnership with BevSource, one of our industry members, and we'll be talking today about Quality Matters, a practical guide for beverage brands. This is one of the biggest topics within the adult non-alcoholic beverage space, especially as we're trying to support members and brands to produce higher and higher quality NA products. And I think we've seen that evolution over the past 5+ years with brands coming out with higher and higher quality products. But you definitely need support as you're wanting to improve your current products as well as launching new ones. So I'm going to go ahead and off to the BevSource team, and they are going to go ahead and take it away.
Hello, thank you for joining us today. My name is Vikrant and my colleague is 𝗂𝗲𝘁𝘀. We are the directors of technical service at BevSource. We want to thank ANBA for having us today to discuss beverages, processing, and quality. We love that ANBA's message is to not only promote the adult non-alcoholic beverage industry, but also to protect it. Next slide, please. So BevSource has beverage as a single focus. We have solutions for every stage of growth, from startups needing a path to market or scaling brands looking to accelerate their growth. BevSource ensures that the product that has been envisioned is the product that's been produced on time, on budget, and in compliance. Next slide, please. So we have expertise in many beverage categories. Every application has its own unique set of challenges. And today we will be focusing on a sort of gray area that has evolved between non-alcoholic beverages and alcoholic infused beverages. I say evolved because non-alcoholic beverages started as simply as offerings that weren't alcoholic. Then mocktails began to be seen more on-premise establishments, being offered as premium juice blends to be reminiscent of a cocktail. De-alcoholized wines and beers were their own category. But what we have now are a result of over 20 years of flavor and ingredient company technologies that can replicate the sensory, taste, aroma, and sensations of alcohol. This includes the burn, numbing, and tingling that alcohol creates organoleptically. And there is now a blurring of functional beverages to be a capital FUN, functional beverages that offer a cocktail-like experience while delivering an actual health benefit or a halo benefit that is perceived to be quote unquote better for you. All of this has resulted in a lot more interest in the overall category in the past 3 to 4 years alone. Many of you are attending this presentation for this very reason. Next slide, please. Being that there are so many brand owners that are looking to enter the non-alc category, there is a lot that is unknown, namely processing and quality. Our agenda today is to discuss why quality matters, processing methods, co-packer and production considerations, as well as challenges you will encounter along the way. Bob will continue with our first topic.
Yeah, thanks, Vikrant. So why quality matters? First and foremost, you want to be able to preserve product safety. You need to produce a shelf-stable product that is safe for the consumer, right? So that's the first step. Secondly, you want to be able to achieve and maintain your target sensory and nutritional stability. So if you have inconsistency in your product, it'll definitely change the flavor profile, and in some instances, it will change the nutritional label. If it changes the nutritional label, you can open yourself up for potential lawsuits. The third is profitability. Well, that's pretty self-explanatory, right? But if you have quality issues that produce non-saleable product, it's going to cut into your profits and, of course, your budget. And lastly, you're trying to maintain the customer trust and your brand reputation, right? So if, for instance, you have inconsistency in the flavor profile, consumers may not want to buy the product. If you have too many quality issues or lack of product on the shelves, you're definitely going to lose the trust of your consumer and your distributor. Next slide. So the next slide here, basically, again, we don't have alcohol to use as a preservative because we're talking about non-alcohol products. So you're going to use one of two primary methods, and you're either going to use heat or you're going to use preservatives. So heat Basically, it's a thermal process that requires a certain level of time and temperature to kill or reduce potential microorganisms, or you can use preservatives such as sodium benzoate, potassium sorbate. These will also inhibit the growth of microorganisms by slowing down the growth of microbes. Off to the right are a few process methods for each. At the very top, you have an instance where you're actually batching, mixing your product, and then you're using a thermal process to the liquid before you fill it into your package. The second one, you're batching, mixing your product, you're filling it, and then you're using the thermal process, on both your formula and your package. And then lastly, again, you're batching your product using preservatives and then filling your product there. Next slide.
So when first getting familiar with beverage processing, many of us are overwhelmed with all the different types of methods. You've heard the term pasteurization since high school, but what does that mean? You probably didn't realize there were so many ways to pasteurize a beverage. We'll be using the term thermal processing interchangeably with the word pasteurize. Next slide, please. In the simplest explanation, the method of thermal processing that is required for a beverage is dependent on the type of packaging, the type of beverage, and the pH of the beverage. We use the terms low acid or high pH beverages interchangeably, and we use the terms high acid for low pH beverages. An example of low acid beverages is a non-alcoholic coffee martini versus a high acid, which is could be a fruit flavored mocktail containing juice. These methods on the left are examples of thermal processing before filling. Hot fill is an example of a thermal processing the liquid first. The liquid is filled hot into a bottle. It's the heat from the liquid that sterilizes the package. HTST and UHT also thermally pasteurize the liquid, but then rapidly it's cooled and then cold filled. Simply speaking, cold filling on its own does not result in a shelf-stable beverage. However, with UHT, you have another option. If you want a shelf-stable product, you aseptically filling it creates a shelf-stable product by filling the chilled pasteurized beverage into a pre-sterilized package. The combined methods on the right commercially sterilize both the liquid and the packaging together. In tunnel pasteurization, you cold fill the beverage into the package, seal it, and then run the product and package through thermal processing. When the package is in a can, it is carbonated or nitrogen dosed to keep the can's rigidity. For retort, the beverage is cold filled and sealed into a package and then placed into a sealed chamber to cook the beverage with a high pressure and heat. Typically for cans, nitrogen is dosed for can rigidity as carbonation does not work. Next slide, please. I've mentioned cold fill quite a bit already. Cold fill can be a standalone process. Think of a can of soda. It can come after thermal process where the beverage has been rapidly cooled, or it can occur first and then the thermal process can happen afterwards. No matter what the scenario is, in the cold fill process, you introduce microcontamination. You need something to inhibit or kill the micro. Chemical preservatives are widely known and familiar to co-packers, though they are not clean label. However, emerging natural preservatives are gaining popularity for clean label beverages, though co-packers may have less experience and need more validation studies to work with them. Regardless, the preservatives, whether the preservatives are chemical or natural, they work to inhibit the growth of micro in low pHs. Preservatives mainly work in high acid beverages. If the pH is over 4.2, most preservatives are not effective. Vikrant is different. It is a technology that you may have heard of. It has been very popular in the wine industry to create sulfite-free wines. Vikrant is an example of a chemical that is considered a processing aid or an incidental additive by the FDA. Since once it kills the micro in a product, it then itself rapidly breaks down, or we call hydrolyze, till it's no longer in the beverage. Vikrant is not perfect since it is not compatible for all types of beverages. Product considerations. With all this information, you're asking, how do you know if cold fill preservatives will be enough, or if a thermal processing method may be necessary? The inherent microload of incoming ingredients is one of the major factors that will determine what is necessary. Bob, you have an example of this?
Yeah, it's important to know and understand these things. I had an instance too where, two separate occasions here. First I had a company that was producing a product that had juice. They decided to go to an organic juice. Well, this organic juice that was coming in, had certain, yeast and molds as part of the makeup. It was coming in anywhere between 20-30,000 colony forming units. So understanding that, we knew that the tunnel pasteurization levels at which they were currently running were not going to be effective. Separately, we, prior to that, they do, customer can send in some juices and or ingredients that have some sort of preservative level in it, which is great to stabilize that ingredient during transportation storage. But, once it's put into the actual mix or blend, you can't rely on that preservative as a whole, because you need to look at the entire formula as one whole unit.
For sure. Thanks, Bob. Before he gets more into which processing method to use, these are the aspects you should consider upfront when developing a product: the beverage and packaging type, and any of your nutritional claims you're going to make. Maintaining the proper pH level is crucial for stability. For high acid beverages, the low pH, less than 4.2, is not a safety concern because the growth of most pathogenic microorganisms is inhibited. Those spoilage microorganisms are still a big concern. However, any beverage greater than 4.6 creates an ideal environment for dangerous microgrowth. Next slide.
Yep. So how do we know which processing method to use? Next slide. So here is basically a decision tree, a guide, if you will. It's not an end all be all, but it'll give you, some, an idea of some of the understanding of the types of decisions that you're going to have to make here, right? So without going through each and every step, I will, take it upon myself to go through just a small part of it. If you look at the very top, you're going to ask yourself, hey, is my product chemically, preserved or formulated to inhibit microgrowth? No, it's not. Okay, I'm going to ask the question, is it going to be sold in refrigerated channels? No. Okay, what about the pH level? As Vikrant talked about, is it low acid? Is it high acid? In this instance, it's going to be high acid. So we're going to move to the next question, which is, hey, is it carbonated? Okay, this product's going to be carbonated. All right, is it free of nutrients? Yes, it's going to most likely be cold fill. If no, it most likely will be tunnel pasteurized. And again, each decision isn't exclusive. That's why, a consultant such as BevSource or engaging in a process authority is important, so you can walk through these decisions together. Next slide. So engaging a process authority. All right. So who are they? Process authorities are recognized experts in the processing requirements for food and beverages. Their recommendations are essential to create a commercial ready formula. Okay. What is a process authority letter? All right. It's a letter. It identifies the types of process needed to run your product, and it is specific to the ingredients within your formula. Who needs one? Well, basically everyone needs one. All right. This is your insurance policy. Okay. So take the time, get the letter, know exactly what process is needed, know exactly what time and temperature is needed, so you can share that with your co-packer. How do I get one? All right. Basically, I'm sorry, I skipped a step. Why do I need one? All right. It's also an insurance policy. All right. In the event of a food safety incident, a process authority letter can provide evidence that appropriate safety measures were delivered and follow, potentially mitigating liability. How do I get one? Well, you can basically reach out to BevSource. We work with a variety of different process authorities. You can also reach out to them on your own. And or if you have universities within your area that deal in food science, you can reach out to one of them as well, and they're most likely going to be able to help you out. And lastly, how much does it cost? Well, they vary between anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 per letter, but it's going to depend on the complexity of your formula. And then in some instances, if you have multiple formulas, they might offer you some kind of deal or discount. All right, so now you have your process letter and you need to vet your co-packer, okay? You need to go to your co-packer and make sure that they have process capabilities that are necessary to run your product, all right? Can they run my package size? Can they mix and blend my product? Do they have the appropriate lab equipment to test my product? Can they meet my time and temperature requirements? These are important questions to ask. Quality considerations, okay? Do they have a HACCP food safety plan? Are they a GSFI certified facility? Will they share their last food safety audit with me? The last one's pretty important. Actually, if you go to a co-packer and they're not willing to share any of this information, that should basically raise a red flag for you. Anyone who's pretty buttoned up from a food safety standpoint would be more than happy to share these documents with you. And then there's business considerations such as the cost of goods. Are you going to supply the ingredients, packaging, or are they going to supply it? How much is it going to cost? Production capacity. Can they handle your short and long-term demands? Ingredients. Can they handle refrigerated frozen juices if required? And then there's the regulatory compliance piece. So if you have a product that's kosher or organic certified, do they hold the appropriate certifications to be able to run those products in their facility?
Some of you may be saying, well, I'm already a seasoned beverage industry veteran. I'm not green. Why should I care? If you're used to working with flavor houses or other product development companies, most don't provide the information in regard to processing and quality. They may give you some recommendations based on their experience. However, only a PA will analyze your formula and evaluate if preservatives are sufficient at sufficient levels, or communicate if micro levels could still be too high after processing. As Bob said, you need a PA letter for each SKU, even if it's a similar type of product. This, as he said, is your insurance policy. You take that PA letter to your co-packer and have them sign off that they have the necessary equipment to meet the temperature time requirements. The key is not to just keep the temperature and time, but that they have the actual proper equipment to do it. For example, if you need tunnel pasteurization in a can, just because a co-packer says they can heat something in a kettle doesn't mean that the process is validated by a process authority. It's important to understand that once you sign off on a produced beverage as a brand owner, the liability of that product, safety and quality is now on you. If there's an issue or worse, a recall, it's going to be on you. Bob, you have an example of that as well.
Yeah, there's been times or instances where, a brand owner reaches out to us and they have a micro issue. So, here's a company who's got their formulas on their own. They went out and they chosen a co-packer. And now all of a sudden they have a micro issue. Well, the first things I ask for is all their food safety documentation. I'll ask them for their formulas. I'll ask them for their PA letters. I'll ask for thermal process records from the co-packer. And in some instances, they actually come back and they say, well, I don't have a process authority letter. And then I ask them, well, how do you know that, the process that you're running is going to produce a shelf-stable product? Well, I talked to the co-packer and they run similar products, that are closely to mine. So they recommended 155 degrees for 5 minutes. Okay. Well, as I mentioned earlier, those process authority letters are specific to your product, not anybody else's. All right. So in these type instances too, you'd find out that, hey, 150, for 5 minutes isn't going to be good enough. And maybe they need 160 for 10 minutes. Well, then you got a lot of finger pointing where it's like, well, the co-packer told me to do this. And then the co-packer says, well, you signed off on it. You got a lot of finger pointing. And at the end of the day, you have product sitting in the warehouse. It's non-saleable. Who's going to pay for it? So to avoid any headaches, make sure you get that process authority letter.
Thanks, Bob. We're speaking a lot about liability because in general, the absence of alcohol makes a product more susceptible to contamination, both spoilage and pathogens. Going back in time, traditional beer contains alcohol and hops, which work together to make it hard for microorganisms to thrive. Removing or reducing one or more of these barriers, namely the alcohol, can open the door to spoilage and pathogens such as Salmonella and E. coli, depending on the environment and the pH of the beverage. So yes, you need to care because safety is and should always be your primary priority. For example, the For example, the process of producing a non-alcoholic beer may not lower the pH, which compromises the protection that traditional beer normally has. The production of non-alc beer may require the investment in different equipment or finding a co-packer that has the necessary equipment, such as tunnel or flash pasteurization that in general may have not been needed before. Regulatory is the next major concern. The regulatory landscape is continuously changing. It can vary from state to state and certainly country to country. Making functional and nutritional claims without substantiation is a huge risk. Adding less of an ingredient below a claim is a problem, and adding ingredients at levels over the allowed maximum is just as much of a challenge. For example, hemp-derived THC in a beverage is only allowed at 5 milligrams per serving in certain states, and 10 milligrams per serving in others. Creating one product that could be sold in multiple states is very difficult. Another example for existing breweries is should their non-alcoholic offerings all of a sudden exceed 5% of their sales, the producer would need to now comply with a completely different set of FDA regulations beyond those that normally apply to a brewery. As in, those are the rules that normally apply to every other manufacturer of a food and beverage product. Product and packaging is the other major concern. It's often overlooked. What's often overlooked is the effect of the ingredients on the integrity of the packaging. Copper and chloride are the main culprits that eat the can liner from the inside. This leads to leaking cans, and it only takes one leaker to destroy a whole pallet of beverages. Salt is often a commonly added ingredient in canned mocktails that if added too high of a level will cause the corrosion of a can liner and then the can itself. Sending samples for can corrosion testing is a must if your can supplier is going to warranty your cans. If you have a larger microbe load from the outset, your beverage could spoil a lot quicker and result in a shorter shelf life. Sometimes working with new ingredients can cause micro issues that most breweries have never dealt with. Draft NA beer is often overlooked because even if a keg of non-alcoholic beer is safe on delivery, just the act of connecting the keg to a coupler for bar service can expose the beer to contamination.
Okay, what else can I do? Next slide. So what else can I do? A pilot production is a great way to, identify and fix costs, issues early on. I know it's an additional expense, but, again, it can save you a lot of money down the road. So if you identify those fixed costs, optimize production, and you can also get samples, okay? It's great to optimize production in the event, and we see this a lot, by the way. Somebody takes on a pilot production with us, and when you think about it, you have a formula, right? And that formula was either created in a kitchen or a lab, very small scale. Now you have the opportunity to optimize it and produce it commercially. So what we find out a lot of times is, as we go in and we start to mix and blend it, you might find certain ingredients don't mix very well commercially. And then you find out that, hey, I may need to have a high shear mixer to mix this ingredient, or I might need a homogenizer to mix it and get it to blend. All right, this is a great way to find out very early on, before you go to a co-packer to produce this. Because again, you're just mixing it in small samples commercially, can save you a lot of headaches down the road. Shelf life study. So the next thing you can do, and again, a lot of people don't take advantage of this, but get a shelf life study done. It determines how long your beverage needs to remain stable at recommended storage condition, takes into considerations taste, appearance, aroma, etc. So brand owners naturally will want to get the longest shelf life possible, but you need to understand how your product's going to hold up over time. Microbiologically, you might find out at 18 to 24 months is, you're good, but you might find out that other nutrients and flavors degrade a lot sooner. Why should I conduct one? Increased demand to show proof by major retailers and distributors on your shelf life. Also, in addition, most retailers will not accept product if it's within the last 3 to 4 months of its shelf life, so it's good to know. And then lastly, inventory management. Knowing exactly how long your product's going to last on the shelves will definitely help you manage your inventory a lot better. cocktail mixer case study, worked with a large brand owner. They wanted minimum 18 months on the products they were creating. They did multiple flavors. So we did some sensory lab, microbiological testing in parallel on each of these accelerated stages. And we saw varying taste and odor results at different intervals. In addition, we saw a degradation of the nutrients. In a couple instances, we saw a change in color over time. So again, these were things that we were able to identify and rectify before the customer went to market with all these. So again, saving a lot of money ahead of time, and obviously a lot of headaches.
Hey, Bob, quick question. And is the shelf study something that BevSource offers as well?
We do. Yes, we offer to do shelf life studies for our customers. And of course, as you know, we also have a pilot production program on site as well.
And I'm really glad you said that. I'll just kind of quickly, that's been a question that I've been getting from retailers regularly, just because they, over the past couple of years, because they definitely at the beginning of 3-4 years ago, they were having adult non-alcoholic beverages, beers, and spirits having a shelf life of 4 to 6 months, and they were pretty concerned about that. So I understand now why that's hugely important, and then you could create some confidence in some of the retailers that you're engaging with.
Yeah, and again, a lot of times people will sit there and say, well, this product's similar to mine, so I think I can get a year out of it, right? But again, you're going to have specific ingredients that's a little bit different, but it might be in the same line of that beverage category, perhaps. But it's always a good idea to understand what that shelf life is. In this instance, too, by the way, this customer who wanted 18 months shelf life, they had to make a decision on some of the other flavors and SKUs. Hey, am I going to accept 12 months, or am I going to accept 9 months? In this case, they decided to go back to the drawing board and reformulate some flavors in order to get that 18 months they wanted.
Yeah, it's good to remember that shelf life is a target. It's not a guarantee. So when we have clients saying, I absolutely have to have 2 years, it's being formulated with the intention of 2 years, but it's a target. There's going to be so many outside factors that could change that, and you really can't really know or verify that until you run a shelf life study. So we've discussed how important having the right partners is. The key is understanding the expertise and limitations of each entity you work with. Examples of partners you will work with are flavor houses, co-packers, third-party consultants, and FDA lawyers to review the regulatory. Questions to ask are, does the flavor house or consultant have the appropriate expertise and technology to achieve the desired consumer experience that you want? Will your consultant flavor house provide samples for QA testing, corrosion testing, and give you references for your first production? Did you verify your co-packer's capabilities and limitations? Did you obtain a copy of your co-packer's food safety, HACCP plan, and audit inserts? Did you validate existing and other alternate recommended paths? And did you review your label and claims with your FDA lawyer? When you hire a consultant, you're hiring them to be your advocate. They ensure you don't miss steps in developing and commercializing a beverage. You don't know what you don't know. Acknowledge that you may not have the bandwidth to manage all of this on your own, and doing it on your own can be daunting. If there's only one takeaway you remember from this presentation, it's that safety is the most important thing. Never forget that the trust in your brand is gone instantly if something or someone gets sick or has to go to the hospital or worse, dies. Companies like us want to make sure that that never happens, and would love to open it up to questions.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you, Vikrant. And yeah, just open up to questions. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and put it in the chat, or feel free, if you want to unmute yourself, we can go ahead and answer any of those questions as well. Let's see what people say. There's a lot of, that was a lot of great information. And let's see. a lot to digest, but yeah. I think that the thing that I will say, well, we'll see if anybody has any questions, is it was really just, you created a really great path that everybody should follow, especially that kind of flow chart. And it just even helped me crystallize some of the processes that I knew were needed, but putting it in that type of flow was really clear on how to get all your checks and balances kind of set up if you're even before the formulation stage as well as the launch stage, etc. See if anybody has any questions.
Hi, I have a
Yep.
question. This is Raja.
Yep.
Yeah, +1 on what Marco said. I've been looking into this topic, and this presentation was extremely useful and simple to follow. Thank you so much. So the question is, what do you all think so I am working on an alcohol filter. It will be like a 𝗁𝗁𝗃𝗃 size, and you can put it on a glass, and as you pour the beer or wine, you can remove the alcohol out. So it can work with any drink. So is that where I'm hoping, because it's so last mile, last moment, the regulations are all simple, the safe, because it's just, and then it just needs the FDA like contact with food regulation approval and the TTB approval. So that's my understanding. Would love to hear the various dimensions I should think through from your side. Yeah, thank you.
Are you, just so I understand, are you looking to create and sell an apparatus that is used in conjunction with an alcoholic beverages? I just want to understand exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not making any drinks myself. I'm a tech bro. I'm not a wine producer or a beer producer.
Yeah.
So building the technology so it can work with any drink, right? It's carbon capture technology applied for alcohol capture. So it'll just instantly filter out the alcohol from any drink.
And that's intended for the consumer experience or an industrial experience?
No, industrial takes time. So I'm thinking consumer through a go-to-market strategy of restaurants and like wine tasting rooms. But yeah, so in a restaurant, they'll offer, hey, any of the wines we have on the wine list for an additional $3 to $4 a glass, we can make it 5% or 0% wine.
I see. Is there any residual alcohol that remains after the process?
So the 5%, yes, if you want to make a low. If it's no, it'll be no. I can remove the entire thing, right? I can even put in more powerful tech. So I can remove, if I just target removing 15% from a wine, I can put in enough tech to remove 30% to make sure it's 0% for ethical, health, and religious reasons. So there won't be any. Sorry, short answer, no.
I think my watch outs would be just how you portray it on your website, or anything that you put online is legal, right? So if you're making any claims that could, for example, if someone is halal or has a very specific diet, or they are completely sober, there should just be no misunderstanding or misrepresentation that the 0% would be that there is still some residual alcohol. So I think as long as you're not over claiming, that would be but my expertise is more on packaged beverages. So that's just the questions that come to mind for me, is just not overstating what your product can do.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback off of that as well, you're going to want somebody to kind of verify and validate, your process. So, by reaching out to the FDA or even a process authority, they can definitely help you with that as well. So,
thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Gonna open up for any other questions? Oh, there's one from Seth. Great presentation. Can you give me an idea of the range of scopes of work BevSource takes on? I could use targeted consulting on process questions, but don't need. I think it says I could use targeted consulting on process questions, but don't need co-packing or regulatory assistance.
Do you want me to take it, Bob?
Sure, go ahead, Vikrant.
Yep. So just for BevSource, all of our services are a la carte. So if someone joins us just for formulations managing, we can do that. If somebody just needs regulatory consulting, we can do that. So yeah, just anything you need, we can provide that service a la carte.
Yeah, and like we talked about earlier, again, we provide resources. We work with a variety, of process authorities. We do shelf life studies. We have the pilot facility. We're also a procurement group. So if you're looking to get, certain packaging and or ingredients, we work with several different suppliers and offer, very competitive rates. So.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Great. Very helpful. Any other questions? You can feel free to mute yourself, or if you want to put anything in the chat. If not, then to any kind of ANBA members, I'm going to share this with ANBA membership, and I'll see if anybody has any other questions. I'm sure that they're kind of having to digest this, and then I can hand it off to Bob and Vikrant to see if they have any questions, as well as Jennifer. So thank you so much for this. As people said, this was a really great presentation, super easy to understand, but something very from something that could seem overwhelming and complex. And just really happy that we have you all as ANBA members, and our members can have you and always see you as a resource. So thank you so much, everybody. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Vikrant. Thanks, Rachel and Jennifer. And have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Bye-bye.